What's up, everybody? It's Greg with Delta, and this is the Be the Difference podcast. This podcast is all about making you a better person in your life and in your business with coaching on sales, leadership, mindset, marketing, everything under the sun when it comes to being an entrepreneur. We bring on guest speakers. Today, I've got the honor and pleasure of welcoming Mr. Dai Manuel. How are you, sir?
Doing fantastic, Greg, and only getting better and better. I love your energy, man. It's like a fresh espresso first thing in the morning, you know?
I look like I surprised you because we were talking off screen before we started. I was just like, hey, this is how the podcast is going to go. And then the recording starts. I'm like, what's up, everybody? Let's go.
I love it.
So for those of you that don't know who Dai is, Dai Manuel is a seasoned entrepreneur and business leader with extensive experience in executive roles. As a co-founder, CEO, and CMO of a successful omni-channel retail organization that generates over 10 million annually, Dai has played an instrumental role in building and scaling a thriving business. Throughout his entrepreneurial journey, Dai has developed a reputation as a strategic thinker with a keen eye for identifying market opportunities and creating innovative solutions to complex challenges. His leadership and vision have been instrumental in guiding his team through periods of rapid growth and change. In addition to his success as an entrepreneur, Dai is a sought-after business advisor and mentor. He is passionate about helping other entrepreneurs and business leaders navigate the challenges of scaling a business. He has shared his insights and expertise through numerous speaking engagements, workshops, and mentorship programs. His experience as a COO and CMO, entrepreneurial mindset, and strategic vision make him a valuable asset to any organization. His track record of success speaks for itself, and his commitment to excellence and innovation makes him a force to be reckoned with in the business world. What? I love that.
Thanks.
Fantastic bio. So, one of the things that I liked, I was reading your bio and I was reading all this stuff ahead of time was you talk a lot about vulnerability and how to overcome being a victim. And, and also beforehand, we talked a little bit about my origin story. And so I'd like to hear about your origin story. What got you to where you are today, Dai?
Well, you know what? Good people. That's what's helped me along the way. And I think everybody can sort of relate to that idea that a hero's journey. And on that journey of our lives, we often will meet people and rather unexpectedly at times that will shift our worldview just enough that we might see a new path for ourselves. And I'm very fortunate that there's been a few of those milestone moments in my life that have sort of realigned me with things that I already felt I wanted to do, but maybe I didn't have the confidence to pursue. In particular, as someone that was a teenager, I was morbidly obese as a teen, up until about the age of 15. And, most people in that state of unhealth, especially in those developmental years, let's be honest, there's a lot of stigmas, that I was dealing with and cliches that a lot of people would be very familiar with. But most importantly, it was my own self-image and the challenges I had with that. And naturally, because of that, I was very withdrawn. I wasn't very social. I was quite introverted because I didn't want to be around people because I didn't like being around myself, and it was problematic. But then I made some big shifts, at 15, I just said, I'm going to get healthy. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I committed to the process of trying to figure it out. And, it took me 5 years to get to my largest, but it took me 20 months to take it all off. And ever since then, I sort of set me on this trajectory where health, fitness, well-being has always been very present in my life, but through a lot of intentionality, and slowly I started to gain a little bit more confidence in myself after going through that change. And when I got into my late teens, early 20s, I struggled as a personal trainer. I really did. Okay. Like straight up. I wasn't very empathetic. Let me just say that. I couldn't empathize with some of the older clients I was working with. Now being 46, almost 47, I'm like, oh man, I was a goof, things, I get it now. I understand our things change as we age. And I wasn't sympathetic to that nor empathetic. And, but then I got into equipment sales and I met this guy, 20 years my senior that had already been in the business, the industry a long time, had a name for himself. And had an existing business that he was a joint venture partner in. It was a national chain here in Canada. And he took me under his wing because he saw something in me. He saw some potential there. Because I got hired into doing that role. It was a commission-based pay structure. And I'd never been in something like that. Something that was performance-based. I loved helping people with change, but I was really poor at figuring out how to monetize that. I was a really good librarian. I could help people, give them all the information, but when it came to conversions into actually paying clients now, I really struggled with that. I didn't know how to ask people to buy, to make a decision. And he tweaked that mindset with me. And next thing you know, I'm like, so you're telling me the more people I help get healthy and fit with all these cool toys, the more money you're going to pay me? And he's like, yeah, that's exactly right. And I'm like, I'm in. And I just went all in on developing the skills required to really connect with people and serve them to find solutions to whatever they're identifying as being their big thing holding them back right now, between going from A to B and whatever that life vision is that they have. And that's really what we do as salespeople, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're a good salesperson, right? If you're a good salesperson.
Yeah.
So I want to ask some questions because I love how you're talking about the struggle that you went through as a young kid and how it affected your self-image. Let me ask you, even to this day, or how long did it take if you've gotten over it? Do you every once in a while still kind of see that kid in the mirror, like where it's still kind of it's still in there?
You can't help it. Like, that's the thing about trauma, right? Like it's always there. It's like a scar, right? Like it's there. There's a memory, and you look at that scar and it brings back some of those memories. And it's a constant reminder that I'm not that person anymore. I'm very different, but I don't deny the origin being there.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be talking today, Greg. Like, we wouldn't be, had I not had that experience at that early age, because it set in motion the life that I've been living. So it's not like I regret that period, but I've definitely, obviously I've been asked the question, if you could go back and do it all over again and never been obese to begin with, would you have opted for that? And I have to be honest and say no, because I know that everything is part of that story now. And it's got me to where I am.
It puts you on the path where you're at now.
But the self-image piece, like, it does come up, like especially when I'm tired, or maybe I'm not looking after myself very well. So, I'm not practicing some of my self-care rituals that I know keep me in a good space, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And when I start to neglect those habits, those rituals, it's easy for the mental health to slide. And when that starts to slide, some of that old stuff, it comes up. It does. I mean, I'm not immune to it, and I don't think any of us are. As I always say, like, we're not humans that are emotional. We're emotional humans, like, that's just who we are. It's what we're made up of. And so we can't necessarily deny the emotions, but we also have to be able to logically look at them and say, okay, is this a real emotion, or is this something that is founded? It makes sense. Like, is it justified? And I find a lot of the time, it wasn't.
That's so powerful. And I love how you acknowledge, you openly and willingly acknowledge it, and the way that you explain it and how you can overcome it, because there's a lot of people that struggle, obviously.
Sure.
And that's something that I realized when I went through my personal development journey, and I started to share a lot of the things I was going through, because at the time I didn't share. I was very I had a lot of shame. I was very ashamed,
Oh, yeah.
and so, but the more I shared, the more I realized that there's so many people were like found commonality in the struggles that I was going through, that I was afraid to share. And it just made me realize that, like, we all go through these. And so it's important, if you're watching this, to realize that, or listening to this, is that whatever you're going through, whatever trauma that is holding you where you're at, or maybe past trauma that you're still holding on to, it's always going to kind of still be there. Like, it's a part of you. It's what helped you to get to this point. It's also what's going to help you to get to wherever you're going, wherever you're ultimately where you'll end up in life. And just as much with as you very accurately said, that if you could go back and do it, you wouldn't. And that's the same with me. Like, the path that I'm on now, I wouldn't be able to do the things I do now if I had not gone through it, even as difficult as it was.
That's right.
So,
and the interesting thing, and thanks for sharing that, Greg, because I think it's really poignant to take note that when we're going through something traumatic, right? When we're in it, like, in it, right? Like, we're in it up to our knees, right? Like, it's like, this is heavy moving, it's not easy. I feel a bit overwhelmed. I'm feeling like, oh gosh, everything's just heavy. Well, Buddha said this too shall pass, and what he meant was, with time, things do tend to work themselves out, or you just keep moving forward and eventually you'll get to the other side. And sure enough, we all do. We have a certain amount of resilience that's just in our DNA, right? Like it's just, I mean, look at human beings, like 8 billion of us on this planet. I mean, that's not by accident. We've got some resiliency in our DNA,
Yeah.
and I think we have to acknowledge that and own it and recognize that I will get through this hard period. And when you do, and you turn around and you look back on what you just went through, it's never as bad looking back on as what it was when you went through it.
Mhm.
And I think it's that important to try to reframe things and learn from that. So you do move forward on the trajectory like you are on. Because of that, you were able to take that experience and then really transform into something very positive that continues to allow you to thrive and move in a direction with great intention. And I know it's not easy to do that. And I'll be honest, full disclosure, I worked with a psychologist for a solid 6 months, as well as a therapist for a number of months to sort of help me reframe and unpack a lot of that stuff, so I could pack it back up in a way that made sense in the period of life that I was, but also based on the life I was walking towards, and so I didn't feel like I was dragging the baggage anymore with me. It felt like, no, I'm packing this, I'm taking it with me because it's part of me. But you know what? It's a good part. And I'm okay with that. And I embrace it now,
Mhm.
and so that's why I often will recommend, find a third party, somebody that's a professional that knows what they're doing with this stuff, and just dive in. But that's where vulnerability comes in, right? Like it's tough. I mean, I didn't get my head straight on until I was 32. I wasn't able to ask for help till then. And it took like an oh crap moment, where I was going to lose my family, lose my business, and I was struggling with alcohol and narcotics consumption. And it was like that, oh man, if I don't make a change now, I'm going to lose everything that I said was what I was working towards, and then I had to ask for help, man. And it was like one of the hardest things to do, but it changed everything.
You know what? I'm consumed with the thought of like having to get to where it's like almost where it's basically rock bottom. When your situation
Yeah.
becomes so dim that you're just like, okay, enough's enough. I need a change. How do we get to help people before they get to that point? Or maybe make them perceive they're at the point sooner than what they
Yeah.
are. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
that's something I've been obsessed with, like how to change people and how to enforce positive change in order for them
Yes.
to realize that they can reclaim greatness and reach a higher potential in life, no matter who they
Yes.
are, right? and
Yes.
and a lot of it has it has to come with it from the individual. Like they have
Mhm.
to make the decision. It's good to get a
Correct.
coach, it's good to get people, third parties, in order to help you along the path, to be there as accountability, to be there to show you, hey,
Mhm.
walk this path. But ultimately each individual has to choose for themselves, like,
That's right.
and that's I guess the conundrum, like how
Yeah.
do we help people to get to that point, or choose before they get to that point?
Yeah, I think it's really great questions. And there's a few different ideas that I could offer around this based on personal experience and just from conversations and people I've connected with other just inspiring stories, And I often like to bring people's awareness to something called the 5 regrets of the dying. And she did a wonderful TED talk, but it originated from a book she wrote called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And her name was Bronnie Ware. She's from Australia. She was an RN, a registered nurse, but her specialty was dealing with people at end of life. She's really her whole purpose there at end of life with these patients was just to make them comfortable, during that final journey that they they literally have to go on by themselves, right? And she found herself inclined to just to have these wonderful conversations with these people, and because she had a great bedside manner, she cared about people, and she would ask them, every single person, is there anything you regret not doing with your life? And the craziest thing was, as she started documenting these answers, it was always one of five, if not all five, of the same regrets. And one of which was, I wish I lived the life I wanted to live and not the one others expected me to. I wished I allowed myself to be happier. I wish I kept in better touch with my friends and family. You know, like these things are very foundational. And when we hear it, we're like, oh, yeah, it makes total sense. Yeah. And
I'll
yet,
do it later.
you know, there's this documentation of all these people. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's just it, right? It's like, yeah, I'll look at that. Like, but here's these things. And when you start to look at this, and these are people that are on their deathbed sharing these things. And they're things that we can relate to right now, you know, and it just instantly will shift things and the things that we're doing every day and start to put a big question mark. Well, why am I doing it? And that why is not an easy thing to answer because it often involves a lot of emotions. You know, it's not just logic. You know, we feel our ways into our why questions, right? And that sort of opens up this idea of purpose and meaning. And that is, I think, where a lot of us find ourselves lost. You know, because if we don't have clarity of purpose or meaning, we figure out ways to distract ourselves from that absence. And that's what I did. I filled that with all sorts of stuff.
All
You
those
know, I
vices,
filled it
all
with
those
alcohol, I
vices
filled
and
it with
entertainment.
partying, I filled it with, dude, yeah. And it's stuff that's just, you know, sort of on a lark, and it's just stuff that you do, but they are distractions. And it's because I wasn't clear on why was I doing what I was doing? What was I working towards? Like, why am I here? And I know these are huge existential questions. And it's not like they're things that you just wake up in the morning, like, oh, I know that answer. You know, like maybe you are lucky enough to have that experience, but I didn't. But I think that is a big piece that people have to start to explore for themselves. You know, like you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like there's some very basic foundations that looks like a big pyramid, but the basics is like, are you safe? Do you have a roof over your head? You know, do you have good family connections? And, you know, like because the one predicates the other and the stability of the other. And at the very top, what we're all aspiring to is this idea of self-actualization, right? And it sounds so like, ooh, cryptic. And like, what does that mean? How do I get there? And at the end of the day, we haven't maybe addressed everything that's below that first. You know, like what are the other things that are preventing us from creating the space to explore those questions? And that's what has to happen. You know, we got to create that space for us to even think and ponder and introspect on, well, what is it I want to do with my life? What makes me feel fulfilled? What makes me feel happy and joyful? You know,
You know,
like,
as you talk about
yeah,
this,
yeah.
you know, from my experience,
Hmm.
I didn't find my purpose and passion until I started taking action on other things just to better myself.
Amazing.
And so,
Hmm.
you know, when I in 2020,
Hmm.
at the end of it was kind of when I had my enough's enough moment. And you
Mm.
know, I found ways to distract myself. I found
Yeah.
ways to distract myself in alcohol and women and TV, you know,
Yeah.
screen sucking off of social media, constantly
Yeah.
comparing food, you know. And so
Hmm.
in the beginning of 2021, I decided, you know, I was unhappy. I was like, enough's enough. I was flirting with suicidal thoughts every other day, you know, and I
Yeah.
got to a point where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to focus on bettering myself. I'm not going to date. I'm not going to see anybody. I'm not going to stop drinking. So I just got rid of alcohol. I got rid of everything that was a vice that was ignored and I didn't
Yeah.
think of it at that point, but that's really what I did. And I just started focusing on
Hmm.
things that were the most important, but also working on myself with physical fitness, with nutritious
Yeah.
eating, you know, reading daily and educating myself and just trying to become a better person. And so it was through that, really just out of I was it was like my last lifeline because I was so unhappy and depressed
Mm.
that I made such a transition and such a transformation that people started reaching out to me and they're like, "Hey man, what's different? What's going on?" And that's how I started coaching and started changing people. And then I got this great just it was the most fulfilling thing I'd ever done. It was like helping another human being overcome their
Yes.
challenges in a simple same way that I did with myself. And that's how I found was like, dude, this is my passion, but maybe my purpose is something much bigger than what I've been doing. Right. It's to impact as many people
Mm.
as I possibly can, to help as many people as I possibly can. And so now but it took me to start taking action and it just fleshed
Hmm.
itself out. Right. Like I feel like if everyone just went it's almost like a universal path, right? Like the universe wants you to be successful. You know, God, the universe, higher power, it wants you to be successful, but you have to do the work, right?
Mhm.
You have to take productive
That's right.
steps forward. And when you start doing that, you never know what's going to flesh out from that. The people that you'll meet,
That's right.
the situations you'll be a part of, you know, the opportunities that might open up for you at that point. You know, you just never know. And so for
Yeah.
me, like I said, and you can expound on yours and like how you found your purpose and passion. It
Mhm.
took for me to take that action.
But the point is, you took action, and I
Yeah.
think that's important to recognize, because as much as we find ourselves as rock bottom, I was like under the rock, right? You know, I was like, I'm just gonna make a little hole under the rock at rock bottom, and I'm just gonna camp out there, you know, and have a pity party and wallow in my shame and my blame, and just, you know, point fingers at everybody but myself. And I found myself in that sort of victim mindset, you know, at times. And again, it would often lead into doing more of the vices to start to distract myself so I didn't have to acknowledge that. And I too had to start taking some very decisive actions in order to start moving away from that, you know, to move more towards something that was more positive and more in alignment with everything I'd always wanted. What I mean by that is, like, I always wanted to be a dad. I always wanted to be a business owner. You know, I grew up watching my parents, very entrepreneurial, you know, running their own businesses. So it was just something that was natural for me to want to do and move into. And also on top of that, you know, there was family was always an important value. So I wanted to have strong family connections and friend connections. And yet I found a lot of the things I was doing all the time was actually taking me away from all of those. You know, it was in contradiction to these values that I held so dear to me. And that creates this internal conflict, you know, and that internal conflict sucks. All right. It's just, it is hard to stay motivated. It's easy to procrastinate, put things off. And it is a bit of a slippery slope, you know, but to get out of it is just as easy as to get into it. And what I mean by that is, it is literally drawing a line in the sand and saying no to certain things so you can say yes to the life that you want. And for me, I had to remove alcohol. I had just had to take alcohol out of the equation. I was like, "Meh, I got to remove that, because I know it's an easy way for me to just give myself some peace of mind for a brief period of time. But it always wake up the next morning. I might be hungover, but also on top of that, feeling the same feelings I felt before I had the drinks the night before. You know, like I realized what I was doing was not creating any solutions, wasn't helping,
Yeah.
and in fact was doing the opposite of that. It was making things worse, and so I had to cut that out, and I cut it out. You know, and at 32 years old, like literally, my wife asked me a question. She's like, "Di, are you being the type of man you'd want to marry your daughters?" And I was like, man, that's a really crappy question to ask me. Like, that's what do you mean? Why are you even asking me that? You know, like getting all defensive and thinking that she's challenging me, which she was. And I had to get really honest with her. You know, she was holding that mirror up, and I'm like, no, if a guy like me at that time was modeling and mentoring through their actions the way that I was showing up every day, there's no way I'd allow them even close to the women in my life, let alone friends and family. You know, and yet that's who I was showing up as. And I was like, man, I don't want to do that anymore. You know, I just don't want to do that anymore. And so immediately stop the alcohol. And within about, you know, a couple months, I realized, oh man, this is way harder than I thought it was going to be, because I didn't realize that, you know, literally 15 years of having this constant crutch, and you take it away cold turkey overnight, it's a very deeply ingrained habit, you
Yeah.
know, and I go as far to say it was actually a lifestyle. And trying to do a 180 overnight is really hard. It's just hard. I mean, anybody that's trying to do big changes, you know, it's not easy. It's often worth it, but
Mm.
it doesn't feel that way when we're going through it, you know. And so I took immediate action, cut the alcohol, realized I can't do this on my own. And that's where I found help, you know. But also I realized that my association wasn't helping things. The people that I was often hanging around the most was often around alcohol, you know, and this idea of drinking and partying. And so I had to realize that, you know, I can't change these people around me. I just got to change the people around me.
Yeah.
And when I found new association, new community, it created some extra space for me to start to live into some of those changes and start doing some of the work to explore, well, what is it that's my purpose? What is my meaning with my life? Like what is the impact I want to make? So when I leave this planet, when I'm 130 years old, knock on wood, I can look back and say, you know what, those regrets of the dying, I don't have any. And in fact, I know I'm leaving this place better than it was when I got here. And that's what I'm working towards. But I had to create the space to actually explore what that looks like, and get positive people around me that felt the same way and were asking the same sort of questions. And those little things like that's what created that initial inertia I needed. And then momentum just kept me going, but it's the hardest thing to do is to go from 0 to 1. It's the hardest. It's the hardest part of any journey. But here's the cool part. It's the only time in your journey you'll get 100% improvement.
Yeah. That's so
after
true.
that, it's diminishing returns after that, right?
That's so true. That is so true.
Well, it's like, in fitness, I tell people, I often coach women and one of their big milestones for themselves, they identify, if I could do a pull-up, if I could pull my body weight on a bar and get my chin over a bar, whoa, I'd feel so good. And often they can do 0, right? Because it's just, again, they just can't do anything. But when they get that very first one, holy smokes, it's like the world shakes, right? And that you see that look on their face, and it's just this confidence that exudes. It's amazing, and I always sort of equate that sensation that we experience is very common for all of us when we go from that 0 to 1,
The point that you made, I think the most important point that I want to highlight for everyone listening is it took for you to have to take an honest look at yourself, to take a true taking accountability yourself. Once your wife, held that mirror up, that proverbial mirror, and that is what was the fuel for you to decide to make the change. That right there. And I think being honest with yourself and taking accountability for what's going on in your life and realizing that I'm here because of the decisions that I made and not because of anyone else. Even if it was in response to another person, let's say, like for a simple scenario, somebody cuts you off in traffic and then you start honking your horn and flipping them off, right?
Right.
You still decided, it is still your actions that you controlled to flip another human being off, right? It's just disrespectful. You can't then be like, well, he cut me off first, so I did this and it was fine. Like, and that's we've as a culture and as a people, we've gotten used to doing that, of pointing the finger and laying the blame. Be like, well, they did this to me first, so I did this. And when I got rid of in my own mind, and I started looking back on all my past relationships and everything that had happened in my life, and I did them in standalone vacuums, looking at just my action without any other justification, and then being like, is this a right or wrong action by itself? If it's a wrong one, I shouldn't have done it, period.
Yep.
Regardless of if they did something to me first.
Yeah.
Regardless. And when you start to stack this up over a few years of your life, and you start to look at it, and you take that honest look, and you're like, and you feel bad for it, and you're trying to repent and make amends for it, really, to yourself, right?
Yeah.
That will be enough emotion for you to want to change.
Absolutely.
That will be the turning point when you would look at yourself honestly and then be like, okay, I need to change something. And then you start looking at the activities that you're putting yourself into that are causing you to make these decisions. It'll be a lot easier to be like, you know what? I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start eating healthier. I'm going to start being a better person. I'm going to start working, every single day towards enriching the relationships that I have with my spouse or my kids or my family or whatever. And you'll start taking those steps forward. But you got to look at yourself and look at your past actions and take true accountability, because I think if we all did that, we would be better as a human race. But
I think you're spot on, Greg. And there's 3 questions that I think can sort of encapsulate a lot of what we're talking about. And these are 3 questions I often share with people. And I just say, start with these questions and see where it takes you. And first of all, you have to identify. So sort of like what you did was, this idea of taking an inventory and getting really honest with where we're at. wonderful place to start, because you need to figure out, where am I beginning? Where's this starting line? You know, where am I today? And because you got to know where you are today if you want to know where you want to go tomorrow. You know, like you need that sort of spatial awareness. All right.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing. You know, we now can also look at it and, okay, well, what's got me here today to this situation that I'm in right now, this present moment? Because often there's going to be certain things that brought us to either that positive or negative, or maybe it's a neutral sort of place, you know, and it's recognizing that there's certain habits or things that we've been doing and doing often that's brought us there. And the way I sort of just simplify this, it's inputs, right? You look at what inputs are going into your life and what are the corresponding outputs that are coming out. It's a very scientific method, right? It's like this goes, you know, like I love using nutrition as an example for this, because it's like, yeah, I put certain foods and drinks in. Here's the result that comes out. You know, I'm tired, I'm lethargic, my joints are inflamed, man, I'm waking up in the middle of the night with the sweats, like whatever, I'm inflamed, you know, like there's all these things. It's like, well, maybe those things I put in is creating or associated with these outputs. What if I change these inputs to something different? Like start my day with a green smoothie. Oh, wow, look at this. I've got energy. And mid-morning, I don't feel like I need to go get a coffee and a donut. You know, like, wow, this is cool. Because as soon as you can start to recognize this direct action that I did, created this direct output or reaction, you can start to then put things together and really own the experience of helping navigate that change based on your choice to do so. And so here's the 3 questions. You know, once you sort of got that clarity of where you're at, it's like, okay, well, this is what I want to change. Great. You know, there's something that you want to change. You know, figure one thing. Don't try to think about all of them, you know, because we'll all list like a long laundry list of things that we'd love to change. But think about the one thing that probably has the greatest amount of impact on all things. Start with that one thing. All right. And, you know, like for me, it was like the alcohol, right? If I knew if I could cut the alcohol out, everything else was probably going to start to get easier. And it was right. I was absolutely right. You know, got rid of that one crutch, and all of a sudden now everything else started to come into focus and become more accessible. And ask yourself, can I do this? Like, can I do the change? That's question 1. Question 2 is, if I do it, will it actually work? You know? And then question 3 is it worth it? Is the change worth it? Or I often say that third question, I mean, if I'm working with a team or an organization, I might use the term it, right? Because I'm talking about all of us. But if I'm talking to an individual, it's like, you got to frame that question, am I worth it?
Yeah.
Am I worth the change, right? But those are the 3 questions. I mean, you just ask yourself those 3 questions. As long as you know where you're starting at, it's going to help you start to identify the vision of where you want to go. And then it's just a matter of getting to work. You know, just get to work. Like, just stop talking about it. Stop journaling about it. You know, like, stop posting about it online. Just go start doing it. You know, and I often joke, you know, like, I think Nike's awesome, great company. You know, I got many branded Nike products. You know, a lot of their shoes. I love their Metcon shoes as an example. It's what I train in. Anyways, I'm not here to plug Nike, but their slogan, just do it. I mean, it's freaking fantastic. But I'm like, hey, you know what's even better? I just did it. You know, I just did it. That in itself is us celebrating the completion of doing the thing that we said is important for us to do because we're wanting to live a certain life or be a certain person or to experience something, you know? And so it's like, embrace the I just did it mentality. Don't talk about it, do it, and then celebrate that you did it. That's what you want to post.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. So when it comes to fitness, how do you help? And it seems like you probably also do. I believe you do fitness health coaching as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So
It's
talk a
all
little
part
bit
of the
about how you
same
help.
conversation.
Yeah. I like it. How do you help people with fitness and nutrition
Well,
overall?
fortunately for me, like, I've been doing that for about 30 years, you know, like since I was basically 17, I've been helping people with fitness and nutrition and mindset. Because I went through so much of that, I just became very hungry for knowledge in that space, you know, and so I've been actively doing that, you know, not only for myself, but for others. And the biggest thing I find for some people is just creating consistency and frequency. Right. I mean, we need both of those. We need to be doing things consistently enough and on a frequency that it creates enough change, right, for us to start to celebrate the winning of changing. Do you know what I mean? Like if we don't start, especially in fitness, like if we don't start to notice some real positive adaptations, whether it be our energy overall, maybe it's a reduction of certain pain or irritation, maybe it's even just, oh wow, I just, my pants are looser today. Like it can be very, very small things, but to experience that very quickly early on in that journey of, say, maybe rediscovering our fitness, it's important. It is important because a lot of us feel like we're losing.
Yeah.
Or we've tried in the past. If you look at historically and statistically, most people have been on a diet of some sort, and it's rarely a positive. People aren't like, yeah, I was on a diet, yay. Like they talk about it, and they talk about how much work the diet was. And I have to educate people. I'm like, well, you know what the term diet actually means? It doesn't mean lose weight. It's how you fuel yourself. It's how you nourish your body. That's what diet actually refers to. And yeah, there's lots of different ways that you can nourish yourself. Yeah, you can do it just with vegetables and fruits. You can do it with just meats. You can do it with the combination of both. Like, I mean, regardless, let's just figure out what allows you to get into your best energetic state. And let's look at longevity and vitality. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about having the energy that you want to have for as long as you can have it. Because that's what dictates the quality of life. Like science is awesome, man. It's helping people live longer. Doesn't mean they're living healthier. And I don't want to be that guy. The last 20 years of my life, I'm in and out of hospitals, right? I want to be thriving. I want to be doing things. I want to be living that I just did it sort of mentality. But I know I'm going to need my vitality. And why I'm bringing this up is once you get really clear on that, if that's your goal, man, there's lots of ways to get there. Right. And so fitness, it's custom fitness. I love to help people with certain types of programs based on sort of what they're at and where they want to get to. And nutritionally, I like to educate people on different ways of just looking at the inputs and seeing how it correlates to certain outputs and results. Because once people are empowered to recognize that if I eat a certain way, not only do I feel great, I'm not hungry, I feel like I'm just in a better place. My body feels better. Wow, I did that because I did this action. I ate these foods and drank these liquids. Wow. Okay, that's tied to that result. Like people have to feel empowered that their choices are helping influence that change. Because I know people want to be told what to do, and that's why people often hire me, right? They want to just tell me what to do, Dai. And I'm like, and I get it. If you're a CEO of a really successful company and you're really busy, you got everything else going on, you're just like, no, listen, man, I don't have the time to figure this out. Just tell me what to do. I'm like, it's okay. I'll tell you what to do. But you need to really take inventory of the things that you're doing and how it's creating this result, because I don't want to be there for you forever. Okay. I don't want to be a forever coach. I mean, like, forget that. Like, I'm going to get bored. You're going to get bored. That's not the point. It's for a season to help you be empowered to now facilitate the changes on your own. And so that's my biggest stressor with people. And sometimes they're okay with it. Sometimes they're not, some people just are like, no, I just want to be told what to do. And I'm like, well, you'll probably be right back here again in a few years, because you didn't really learn how to facilitate the change on your own.
Yeah.
And so like fitness though, man, I love it. And you could probably agree, Greg, because you're a super fit dude. And I know you've embraced fitness in this transition phase that you've gone over the last few years. Like I'm only ever one workout away from feeling better.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know this about myself. I can be down in the dumps. Maybe I lost a deal. Maybe that contract ended up getting canceled or postponed. Like, there's lots of reasons why I can be, oh, poor me. But I'm like, nah, you know what? That kind of sucks. But yeah, I'm going to go for a bike ride right now. Listen to some positive tunes or listen to an audiobook that I really enjoy. And I'm just going to go ride my bike for an hour, I live in Vancouver downtown. It's got this beautiful seawall. It's summertime. It's gorgeous out, right? Like I'm going to go do that. And I always feel better after the fact. And my brain ends up thinking about things. And I start thinking about other opportunities that are coming down the pipe. And you know what? This one I might have missed out on, but you know what? Now I've got the space to maybe say yes to that next big one. It's all just a perspective. It's a point of view. But I have to sometimes just take the stress off by doing something positive that's physical for me, because I know instantly it's going to shift me into a better place, And I bet you're the same way, Greg. I'm looking at you. I'm like, you're a fit dude, man. I know you get the benefit of this, right?
I absolutely do. There's nothing like, I mean, here, and I will say, I will caveat this with, I work out every day. Like, well, pretty much. I work out basically every day, sometimes twice a day, most times twice a day. And I recently got COVID. I got diagnosed with COVID while I was on a cruise ship, by the way.
Oh, no
And
way.
yeah,
Whoa.
so I got put on isolation like the last day and a half,
Oh,
me and my entire
oh,
family.
wow.
And I was sick when I got back from the trip
Yeah.
for about 3-4 days, so I couldn't go to the gym.
Mhm.
And I just took that time to rest, right? So
Nice.
getting out of
Yeah.
the rhythm of working out all the time for
Mhm.
that 5 total days,
Yeah.
for me, really messed with my mindset, because I'm so
Mm.
used to working out every single day that getting
Yeah.
back into the gym when I started feeling better, the first day was great, but then the second day I was like, it was a little struggle. It was a
Yeah.
little, it was hard for the second, third, fourth day getting back in the gym. And that was just
Mhm.
this past week. Right. And so once I got to a point where I was getting my momentum back, but it took like almost 5 days for me to start to get
Yeah.
my momentum back. And the point of this is that it happens to all of us.
Oh, it sure does. Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I've been working out every day for like almost 2 years, every
Wow.
single day, and with no rest days. And now that I took
Mhm.
those rest days, now it's gotten to where I'm like, ooh, I kind of want another rest day. Like I don't really want to go to the gym right now. I got this, that, the other do. But when I force myself to go, even when I don't go, or when I don't want to go, man, I feel so much better afterwards. I feel
Yes.
so much better afterwards. I'm like,
Yes.
thank God I went. Like, I can't believe I thought about not going. And you're right. I listen to
Yeah.
podcasts when I'm working out. So I'm
Yeah, me
trying
too.
to always teach myself, and like I start to think of other ways to do things. It's a great way for me to problem solve and just work through problems in my subconscious while I'm lifting. Um,
Yes.
yeah, man, I agree 100%.
And I think I'm just going to draw out what you're saying here and just sort of simplify it even one step further for everybody that's listening or watching. It's doing more things that you'll never regret, right? Like, going to the gym and choosing to go to the gym for that day 2, 3, 4, even though it's, gosh, it's like I'm pushing that boulder up the hill again, but I know I'm going to get to the top and I can push it down the other side, but I just got to get to the top. But by going and showing up, you're not going to regret that you made that choice, that you followed through with that action. You would have regretted if you didn't show up on day 2 and you didn't show up on day 3. That's where the regret and some of those negative emotions come in. It's from the inaction,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And it's like with my clients, I've got this salad recipe, right? And I call it the big ass green salad. And and it looks like a rainbow. I encourage people, make it colorful and put some sort of lean protein, some cedar plank salmon, throw something on there that's going to satiate you. And that's going to be your lunch every day for the next 5 days. Can you handle that? Yeah, I can handle that. Great. I've never had anybody message me after eating that salad and say, Dai, you know what? I really regret that you made me eat a salad today. I've never had anybody send me that message. I might get the message, you know what? I regret that you programmed burpees today. Okay. I do regret that, but I'm happy that I got the workout in, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's remembering that, embrace more things that we know we would never regret doing, you
yeah,
know? And if you do more of those things, you're going to find you just regret less stuff in overall, just in life, because you're going to be in a much more positive frame of mind and a creative space. And when you're in a creative space, it's incredible how the subconscious and the conscious start to work synergistically to help create the results that you want in life. And I know it sounds a little bit cryptic and it kind of sounds a little woo woo, but all I say is, listen, what do you have to lose? Just try it. Just try it.
yeah,
You can come back after a few months of trying this and tell me it's all wrong and it didn't work. That's okay. But you got to make sure that you adhered and you followed through.
mhm,
You got to have enough agency to be able to do this yourself and have that accountability. I'm going to be here. I mean, I got size 12 shoes. When they kick you in the butt, you're going to get moving. But I want you to be able to do this on your own, and so it's important, right? Because we can't do the work for others.
yeah.
And people can't do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves, And that's where the struggles are, I think.
No, I agree 100%, especially
Yeah.
like for what I've experienced with my coaching and how I've helped clients. That is probably the biggest struggle is giving them free agency, right?
Yes.
So where they take accountability to where they make the decisions. It's really just, it's a teaching process for them to basically take control of their own lives over time. What starts off with just nutrition and fitness and exercising turns into so much more, turns into really like an alignment of their physical, mental, and spiritual growth in life, and becoming a better person. And so,
well said. Well said.
oh, thank you. Thank you. Same to you, Dai. Same to you. You talked about health. You talked about health, and you mentioned earlier that you have your like kind of routines, your morning, daily routines that you do to help keep you in a good mental state. I love to hear what people's routines are. What's yours?
Well, back in the day, I used to be pretty prescriptive, and it was like I had a list, and I would just go through the list every day. But what I realized, like with family and growing kids and just businesses and just life, man, I found what would happen often is I'd have my list, but I'd struggle to get through everything. And then I'd have this sort of sense of failing, a little bit of guilt that I didn't follow through on what I committed to following through on. That's why I've got this morning routine. And when I started talking to people about it, it seems that my feeling wasn't a unique thing. It's often happens for a lot of us that are trying to make certain shifts and changes. And we create these lists, or we read a book and it says, do all these things every morning, and you do it from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. and right. And it's great. I think it gives us some guidelines, gives us a blueprint to start with. And that's very helpful. But in time, we have to be able to recognize that I might need a little bit more fluidity with how I live my life, because it's dynamic and not static. There's a lot of moving parts and it's constantly changing. That's the kind of life I choose to live. And as such, I've got space now where I know every morning I typically work out. I do wake up between 4:30 and 5 a.m. every day. And I've been doing that since I was 18. That's just me. I love getting up early, because especially when I started having young kids, it was like, that was my window where I could do whatever I wanted. And it was just me.
Yeah.
I didn't have to worry about my kids and interfering on their day and not showing up. And so it just became this ritual that really fulfills me, because I use my morning for stuff that I want to use it for. Sometimes I'll journal, not every day. Sometimes I'll just write out my thoughts or plan out my day. I'll often have an espresso, I might go for a walk, a bike, either before or after my workout. And I'll always have some sort of big healthy smoothie to start my day, after my workout. And it's a big smoothie. It's like, it's ritual. I feel off if I miss my smoothie, to start the day.
Yeah.
And those are some of the habits that I found are most fulfilling for me. And just, it works for me really well. But notice that I'm not giving a long list, and I didn't say meditation. I didn't say stretching or yoga. I do that sometimes, but it's not an everyday thing. It's based on how am I feeling. Like sometimes I'll wake up and that workout I did yesterday, I can tell my body needs an extra day of recovery. I'm going to have an active rest day today. I might go for a bike or a swim, a long walk, or maybe just do some yoga or some stretching, like some mobility work on the mat for half an hour. Like, I give myself the freedom to sort of listen to my body and sit with it and say, what do I feel like I really need today? And then I give that to myself. But it's only because I've made non-negotiable space every day for me to focus on my health. Every day. I got that hour that I know no matter what, that's my hour to have health specific focused actions. And I don't negotiate on that. It's like, no, that's happening. And my family knows it. My friends know it. Like, no, it's like my weekly date night with my wife. It's every Saturday night. We've got it synced on our calendars. It's non-negotiable. I mean, our friends don't even call us anymore unless they're inviting us to do like a double date or something. Like, they just know it's Saturday night. Dai and Christy are busy.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be that rigid, I think, at times to create the habit, but also more than that, to just create the ritual of setting up your life the way you want it to be lived, And so those are some of the aspects that work really well for me. And again, what works for me may not work for everybody, but I invite people, have a little bit of flexibility with your morning routine. But the point is, have a routine, have some time that's intentional for you. Start your day with that intentionality and that focused energy into yourself. It's a great way to set yourself up for a successful day.
I love it. I love the idea of keeping it dynamic. And not static. I've been terrible about keeping static. I've changed it so much too. I'm like, I do one more routine, and someone's like, "Oh yeah, I do this," and I'm like, "Oh, I'll try that instead."
Yeah, nice.
I'll try. Oh yeah, you do meditation. I'll try meditation. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you do reading in the morning. I read every day, but I'm like, oh, I'll try doing it in the morning. You know. Then before you know it, you get like a list of like 10 things before you
Oh
even
yeah.
start your day.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's overwhelming. It almost
Yeah,
becomes stressful in itself, right? This
yeah.
idea of trying to complete everything in the morning. And that's why I look at the 75 hard, like what a neat program. I know it's helped a lot of people, but it's not sustainable. You know, I think for the average human being, it's a really hard thing to keep sustained. You know, like it's such a commitment to follow through on it. And they have it. You miss one day, you got to start over again.
Start over. Yeah.
It's like, whoa, you know, like that is intense. And I know for a certain type of individual, they love that kind of a commitment to themselves. But
That's me. I've done
yeah,
it.
and
I've done
that's
it like
great.
4 times.
But it's not everybody though, right? Like,
I know. No.
it's recognizing that you know, just because one solution works for somebody, it doesn't mean it has to work for you either.
Yeah. No.
You know, and we have to be flexible enough to say, you know what, I'm in a period of discovery. I'm going to try a lot of different things to figure out what works for me. But you have to give it a long enough try. And I think that's the problem, right? Like the real problem with most of us is if we're not getting that instant gratification, because we are conditioned to that. I mean, look at what is it? Prime, you know, it's like the one-stop button, like button done, it shows up on my doorstep. I only had to click one button. Wow, this is great. You know, like that instant gratification is so ingrained in our culture now, especially in North America, that I think even when it comes to health and fitness, we still have some of that instant gratification expectation. I look at Ozempic right now, just the new drug that's all over the place, you know, and there's a lot of people that are overweight saying it's a miracle drug. It's like, well, I take this drug, I can eat what I want, and I'm losing weight. Wow. There's also a lot of studies coming out and talking about all the negatives and all these long-term symptoms that are now showing up with people that are using the drug. And I'm like, well, what is it worth it? Like, anyways, it's just, I didn't want me to go there, but I think we're looking for quick solutions when often it's the long game that we have to be playing.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and
there's no cheat code. There's no
no,
cheat code. There is no quick solution to the problem. It is
yeah,
the same that it's always been. It's just rolling your sleeves up and doing some work and being
correct.
consistent with it, doing it every single day. You don't have to build the entire brick wall today, but you do need to put down one brick perfectly every single day and
Yeah,
then look at it in about a year. Right. And then be like, oh, well, I built a wall. Like that's what it comes down to. And you're absolutely right. You know, the 75 hard, not for everybody. It
yeah,
was for me. It was very like
yeah,
intense and extreme, and I was like, let's go.
yeah,
And it was a huge shift for me.
sure.
And I'll tell you, I was, you know, you talked about when you first started personal training how you weren't very empathetic, right?
Mhm.
And I was the same way when I got done with 75 hard because I was at such a
Mm,
high that I'm just like
yes,
everybody should do this, and I'm just like, and
yeah,
people are like, oh, it's too intense. I'm like, you're weak. Like, that's just weakness
totally get it.
talking. Like,
Totally get it.
get your head on right. Like, and I'm just like
Yeah,
super intense. And it took me some time to kind of come off that and realize like I'm not even being empathetic. And it's probably not for everybody. However, I could probably take pieces of it and help people with pieces like reading every day.
mm, yeah,
Massive game changer for me, right? That was something
yeah,
I started because of 75 hard, but it's something that I'm very thankful for that I've continued since then. That I can
yes,
look at people and say, hey, look, this is something that like you should be doing regardless to just as a better human being. You want to be productive. I don't care what job you're in. I don't care if you own your own job, whatever, or you own your own business. You should be reading every day to
yeah,
just to teach yourself skills, to be a better person, to help with your creativity, to help with your conceptualization skills. There's all these things, benefits that it has. You can take 10, 15, 20 minutes out of your day to read 10 pages. Really not that hard, right? And so learning certain things like that, like, hey, let's be on a diet. Let's find a diet that you can maintain because that's really what it is. It's
hmm,
finding something that you can live with, right?
that's right.
It's
That's right.
finding that diet. It doesn't matter if it's a fad diet or not, or if it's just like just eating healthy or taking out sugar, whatever it is. It's got to be
Hmm,
something that you can maintain for the lifetime because as soon as you go back, is that there is no diet that you do for 6 months, you lose some weight, and then you go back to eating the way that you were because you're going to get back to the way that you were. Like you're just
that's
going to
right.
turn right back into it. So it's like, okay, well, let's teach you how to use the proper amount of calories and while still eating the right every once in a while treat yourself to foods that you like, right?
Mhm.
As long as you're hitting your macros, as long as you're getting the right amount of protein and you're keeping your fats under this, or you're keeping your carbs, however you want to structure your diet, right?
Mhm.
And realize that there's no cheat code.
That's right.
Like you cannot expedite this. You just got to do it. And honestly, if there was a cheat code that actually legitimately worked and it did have some crazy side effects in the future or potential of you having it worse off, you wouldn't appreciate where you
Mm.
got.
That's right. You're right.
You just wouldn't appreciate it. You would have no sense of appreciation for the hard work you did, no sense of pride. When you look at yourself in the mirror, I can't tell you how, and you probably felt very same. I started off very skinny. I was a scrawny.
Mm.
I'm tall. I'm 6'7". I was like
Ah, yeah.
skinny, right? So much that like I got made fun of. I had a very similar problem, but I was
Mm.
on the opposite end. I was so
Yeah.
skinny that everyone picked on me, pushed me around, made fun of me, and I never wanted to be that skinny. And so for a
Mm.
long time after I got big, even every once in a while, I still see that skinny kid in the mirror. But there's nothing that's greater than looking in the mirror at what you've accomplished and realize
Yeah.
that you did the work to get your body to that location, to that specific point in time. You didn't
So
cheat.
good.
I mean, that kind of confidence and that amount of pride in yourself, it transcends to everything else in life.
That's right. The way you do anything is the way you do everything, and that lesson that you learn through that change process can be applied to other areas you want to see similar changes to. And I think that's the biggest piece with the mindset of change, is recognizing that I can be an active participant in my change. I don't have to feel like I'm a victim to it. I always sort of say the Indiana Jones movie, right? Like Raiders of the Lost Ark, 1982. Big boulder chasing him out into this massive cave, right? And he's running with this idol, and this boulder is barreling down at him. I think it's a perfect metaphor for how we experience change. Most of us are Indiana Jones. We're running with something or towards something, and we feel like change is right behind us and it's going to
Yeah.
barrel us over and we can't do anything about it. We feel helpless to it, a victim to it. And you know what? That's not the case. That's not. Like, change can happen, and it can happen as soon as we decide that we want it to happen. And we can be active participants in the changes that we see. Now, not all of them are within our control. I get that. But the way we manage it, the way we react to it, it is in our control, right?
Mhm.
And what we do following that is in our control. So, yeah, I love everything you're talking about, Craig, because I'm like, oh man, we're on the same wavelength, and I know if anybody that's listening or watching this, like, hopefully they're taking some nuggets away, and they just, at the very least, if there's something that you've been thinking about wanting to change, well, as soon as you're done listening to this or watching this, well, go do that one thing, go do one action, and that's the start. That's how everything begins, right?
Yeah. That one first step. That's where it starts.
Yeah, man, 100%.
Dai, thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. I've been keeping you now
Thanks,
for a little
Craig.
bit longer than usual. But this has been a great conversation.
Likewise.
I got a couple
Yeah.
questions. First
Sure,
off,
man.
I love the pictures on the back. I'm a huge comic book
Oh,
nerd.
oh yeah. Oh man, I got
And
like
so
8,000 of them.
I saw but it's the comics and some of the drawings. I was a
Yeah.
drawing major in college when I started.
Oh, no way, dude. Yeah, I
I
got Neil
I wanted
Adams
to be a
prints.
comic.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
I wanted to be Todd McFarlane so bad. I
Oh,
love Todd McFarlane's art. Um,
incredible. Incredible.
yeah, just a great artist.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to highlight that because I love
Thank you.
going on in the background. So,
Fellow nerd. I love it.
yeah. So the other thing is I have a question I ask all my guests. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Fire.
this question is, if you had the opportunity to sit down with, learn from, break bread
Mm,
with any three individuals in history, alive or
wow.
deceased, who would they be and why?
Well, here's the interesting thing. Okay. Einstein, for sure. I think he'd be really entertaining, but more so just his philosophy of life. I really, I dig some of his writings and just the way his brain worked. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever have somebody like him again in our history. We may never, ever, and just yeah, absolutely incredible. I think he'd be really fun to hang out with. Um, and then second to that, I often thought about Gandhi, but I often think that the conversation would probably be very kind of flat. You know what I mean? Like, because and when I say flat, I just mean like he was just such a strong individual with very strong belief systems, but it was also just, that was the thing that I think I admired the most about him, is that he was so steadfast in his beliefs. It was like there was no room for anything else. It's like, no, this is it. This is the way, right? It's like Mandalorian. This is the way. You know, like, and I think that would be, but it would be interesting, you know. But the third person, and this is something that I've thought about quite a bit the last 5 years, and it would be my dad. I lost my dad to pancreatic cancer 5 years ago, and we didn't have the best of relationships. You know, like we loved each other, but we never expressed that really, and we didn't really talk about the deep stuff. And you know, you always find yourself sort of at this period, you know, like I left home and moved across the country when I was 18, right? My parents had already divorced and separated many years before that, and my mom raised us, and so we'd see my dad periodically. But as I aged, you know, I saw my dad less and less, and you know, I'm not a phone call guy, you know, I wouldn't phone him or anything, and he wasn't phoning me either.
Yeah.
And so we just didn't have that closeness. And you know, being where I am now with my daughters now at 18 and 20, you know, at the age that I was when I left home, and I just think back and I'm like, you know, I'd love to be able to have one last conversation with my dad. You know, like I would absolutely just, I would love that. And that is one of my regrets, you know, is that there was a lot of things I wanted to say to him when he was on his deathbed that I just didn't say. And that's something I got to live with, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. That was very vulnerable of you.
Yeah.
So
No,
I
it's
appreciate that.
just the truth, man. It's just the truth. So.
Dai, thank you so much
Thanks,
for
Greg.
jumping on the Be the Difference podcast. If anyone wants to learn more about you or even reach out to you for some help or watch your content or anything like that, where is the best place they can follow you or reach out to you?
Well, Instagram, I'm really active on very consistently. And it's just Dai Manuel. It's a nice thing. Any of the social networks I'm on, and it's just my name, Dai Manuel, Dai. And then Manuel is Manuel. And Dai is a Welsh name. It actually means David, just in case people are wondering. And but I do recognize that a lot of the people that I do connect with aren't necessarily on social, with the exception of LinkedIn. And so I'm also very active on LinkedIn. So I always say just LinkedIn or Instagram, pick your poison, and reach out, because I just love having conversations. I'm just like you, Greg. You know, I just like connecting with people and having a conversation and discovering what makes people tick, you know? And so I just got to acknowledge you, Greg, too. I mean, thank you for making that decision a few years ago to get onto this trajectory that you're on, and to create this platform to capture these conversations. Because, man, all of us, we're very fortunate to be flies on the wall, to listen in to you and to the people that you're having these conversations with. And thanks for just putting it out to the world, man. It was an honor to be here today, dude. Seriously.
I appreciate it. Yeah, the honor's mine, man. I love doing this, and I always take some nugget away from the person I'm speaking with, and you are definitely no exception. So there is a lot of nuggets on this specific podcast. So for those of you watching, do me a favor. You obviously got value. If you watch till now, do me a favor and share this content with another person that can also get value. That friend, that family member that's in that rut in life, and maybe they're being the victim, or maybe they're just not taking action. Possibly sharing this with them could change their perspective and get them to change the trajectory of their life. You know, it takes 30, 60 seconds to rate, review, subscribe, and share, but it means the world to both Dai and I if you do that. This has been the Be the Difference podcast. I'm your host, Greg Birch. Until next time, we'll see you.